Hello and welcome to video 27 in my Rigging in Maya series. We now have a ribbon driving our joints, which gives us a good foundation to build upon, but we can push it further. In this video we will investigate adding deformers, which will bring a new level of flexibility to our rig. Now, to be honest, this isn't really suited to this particular character and would normally be used on a more cartoon style creature. But there are elements which will help bring an extra level of realism to this rig as it animates. Things like my basic muscle and fat simulation, for example. You can also see this video as a starting point too. And once you grasp the basic idea behind the systems, you can add more to them, improve upon them, and build your own more complicated systems in the future. Now, before we get started, I thought I would let you know that you can download all the source files for this and all my other courses from my CubeBrush, Ko-fi, Gumroad and ArtStation pages. You can find links on the screen and in the description below, so you can follow along and pick the files apart to see how they work. I also wanted to let you know about the Ant CGI Club. Joining the club is a way for you to help support the future of this channel, as it will allow me to dedicate more time to creating new content and keep it all free. But that's not all. You can also earn yourself exclusive rewards. These include the course assets, models, rigs and custom-made scripts, as well as access to the members-only area of the Ant CGI Club Discord server. You can also claim a discount on all Ant CGI merchandise and, for a limited time, get an exclusive Ant CGI Club badge. There are two ways you can join. The first is to simply click the join button below this video and become a member of this YouTube channel. The second is to head over to my Patreon page and support me there. Alternatively, you can visit the link on the screen or in the description below to find out more. So here we are, exactly where we left the rig at the end of video 26. The driver joints move the ribbon, which in turn manipulates the follicle joints, which will eventually drive our model. We also have these extra controls which mean the animator can tweak and adjust the leg to achieve better poses. If you remember, we also added these extra copies of the ribbon which we stored at the base position. There's one for each limb. If you don't have these, you can create them easily. Just select the ribbon and set the skin cluster's envelope attribute to 0. This will move it back to the bind position, the position it was in before the controls snapped it to the limb joints. Okay, let's hide the others for now and concentrate on just one ribbon. The process is exactly the same for all the others, so you can easily repeat this later on. If I select the rear leg control, you will see that I've added lots of new attributes. I didn't want to show you how to add these again, as I've already covered this plenty of times before. These will help the animator control how the leg deforms. Okay, let's focus on these first, and come back to the muscle system later. Duplicate the def ribbon, so we have two identical ribbons. Rename the first to left rear ribbon sign BSH, with the BSH stands for blend shape. And rename the second, just changing sign to twist. Let's move that one back. Maybe we should hide some of these systems too. First we need to create a blend shape node. So select the two new ribbons and then the main leg ribbon, and let's create a blend shape. Call the blend shape node left rear ribbon def BSH, just so we know what it's used for. Okay, so now we have two attributes here which will allow us to blend between the two deformer ribbons. If I slide them both to 1, we see the ribbon move away from the leg. It's moving this far because it's multiplying the movement by 2 because we have the two attributes. You see, if I move one, it just blends to the deformer ribbon. So this isn't exactly what we want. We need the main ribbon to stay where it is. This is happening because the order in which the ribbon is being deformed is wrong, so the blend shape is happening after the skin cluster, and we need it the other way around. Right click on the ribbon and go down to Inputs, All Inputs. This opens a window showing everything that is influencing this ribbon. You can see here that the blend shape is at the top, so is being evaluated last. All we need to do is drag this down with the middle mouse button so it's below the skin cluster. And that's it, nice and easy. You can also do this in the blend shape options. If you go to the Advanced tab, you can specify exactly where you want the blend shape node to be in the list. Pre-deformation will give the same effect we are after, as this will place the blend shape before the skin cluster. Now as we adjust the blend shape attribute, nothing happens, which is good. Nothing's happening because the deformer ribbon is the same shape as the main ribbon. If I move this out and quickly deform it, you will see the main ribbon changes now to match the updated shape, but it also retains the overall shape of the leg. So that's working. Good. This is because the blend shape is being evaluated first, and then the skin cluster is being applied after that. Now let's add the deformers. Select the sine ribbon and go to Deform, Nonlinear, Sine. That's created a sine deformer for us. Next, select the twist ribbon, and this time apply a twist deformer to it. Let's rename these before we move on. We should also rename these too. So we have the handle, which is the transform, and then the actual deformer node. We renamed the deformer node just to make it easier to see what we are working with later. Let's hide the twist ribbon for now. If I open up the sine deformer options and play with the amplitude attribute, you can see the ribbon starts to curve. We can adjust the wavelength to add more curves if we want them, and use the offset attribute to animate it, so it creates a nice wave effect. Now that's fine down here, but this isn't affecting the leg just yet. That is until I set the blend shape to 1, so it's active. So you can see that the deformation has been passed to the leg, but it's also keeping the basic leg shape. We can also use offset to animate it too. Let's bring back the follicle joints. As you can see, the joints are still following the ribbon, so they maintain those curves. Now for this limb we probably don't have enough joints to get a nice curve, not with this wavelength anyway. Let's reduce that so it's a softer curve. So this should produce a nicer flow. Remember that it's the follicle joints which will be driving the model, so where these move, the model follows. One problem we do have is that the top and bottom of the ribbon are moving away from the base positions, so this will break the rig. Luckily we can fix this by adjusting the drop-off attribute. Setting this to 1 means the curve has a fall off, so blends back to the base pose. This means the ankle and root stay where they are. If we use the offset now, you can see that they don't move. Okay, that's one deformer set up. Let's look at the twist next. Hide the sine deformer and ribbon, and bring back the twist. Let's adjust the blend shape. So set sine to 0 and twist to 1 to activate it. The twist is a bit simpler. We can adjust the start angle, and you see the ribbon twists from the bottom of the leg. It's also twisting on the main rig too. So the follicle joints are following and twisting too. We can also use the end angle to twist from the opposite end. I'll just bring back the controls. Even though this is twisting now, we can still move the controls to adjust the leg's overall pose. So we are giving the animator a lot more freedom to do some crazy things with the legs. We can move the paw control and the whole leg still follows and stays twisted. Okay, let's reset this. And bring back the sign deformer and ribbon. All we need to do now is make these attributes drive the deformers. So the animator just needs to look here and not go digging into the depths of the rig systems. Okay, let's hide these. Select the control and open the connection editor. So we have our attributes here. Let's connect the two blend attributes first. These are just going to drive the blend shape attributes. So let's load that into the opposite side and open the weight attribute, which is where they are stored. All we need to do is connect the twist blend attribute to the left rear ribbon twist BSH attribute, and then the sign blend attribute to the left rear ribbon sign blend shape attribute. Easy as that. We can use those now to drive the blend shapes. There's the sign and the twist. We can even use both at the same time if we wanted. Okay, let's connect the sign attributes now. So select the sign deformer handle. I'll just go into the attribute editor. What we need is the shape node, not the transform. So select that and click Reload Right in the connection editor and scroll to the bottom. These are the attributes we need to connect to. So amplitude connects to amplitude, surprisingly. Wavelength goes to, can you guess? Yeah, wavelength. We will skip orientation for now and jump to the animate attribute. This connects to offset. I called it animate just because it seems a better name than offset. So the animator knows that attribute animates the sine wave. If I select the control now, I can adjust the amplitude and then animate it. You could also use a different name for the amplitude and wavelength attributes, something that makes what they do a little clearer for the animator. Let's go back to orientation now. All we're going to do with this attribute is use it to rotate the sign deformer handle. Like this. If I make them visible again, you can see it better here. Okay, so load the handle into the right side. I'll just turn off Show Non-Keyable and connect orientation to the Rotate Y attribute. The animator can now use these attributes to control how the leg deforms. I'll hide the sign deformers now. And let's switch to the twist deformer. For this one, all we want to do is control the root and the tip, using the attributes I demonstrated earlier. Here they are ready to be connected. So let's bring in the twist deformer and show the non-keyable attributes. Connect tip to start angle and root to end angle. You may need to switch these depending on the orientation of your deformer and your ribbons. We can now control the root from here and twist the tip too. So that's those two deformers set up. Now I know it wasn't difficult, but it adds more flexibility to the rig. Let's close this. Let's hide the joints and the IK handles. So the animator can pose the leg and, if needed, twist it from the root. And the tip. They can also add a wave to it too. Plus, continue to pose and animate the leg even with all this happening. Okay, we are at a point in the video where I magically switch to a version where all the legs are set up. Now don't worry, they are all done in exactly the same way. So just repeat the process and check back here when you're done. Okay, here we go. All the legs are set up with the deformers. We can twist them all. And we can add a wave and animate it. Here we have all the deformers and the ribbons. As mentioned earlier in the video, these types of systems aren't really suited to this dog, but if you were building a more cartoon style animal, they would be perfect. We also only used 2 deformers here, so feel free to expand upon that and experiment with some of the others to see what effects you can get. Speaking of which, what we are going to do now is use another deformer to give us some basic muscle and fat simulation as the dog moves. This is where these attributes will be used. What we want is some secondary animation, but we also need it to depend on which section of the leg is moving. Because the femur area is thicker and more muscular, it will need more movement than the other areas further down the leg. Now don't worry, this isn't complicated at all. In fact, it's dead easy to set up. I'll hide those IK handles. All I'm going to do is select the main ribbon and go to Deform, Jiggle, Jiggle Deformer. Now you can apply this to the whole ribbon, but I prefer to select the CVs I want to influence and apply it to those directly. I know that I don't want the main joint areas to be affected, so this means I can quickly eliminate those areas. You can always just use the white painting tools to paint them out too. I'll hide the joints so I don't keep selecting them, and I'm going to select the CVs between each main joint. So here, leaving the tip ones, and the next section, and the lower section. So you see, I've skipped the main areas. I can apply this with the default settings. Let's rename that Jiggle Deformer before we move on. I'm a little obsessed with renaming things with my rigs, whereas in Photoshop I rarely rename any of my layers, which can be a little frustrating sometimes. We now need some animation on the leg. Press S to set a key. Just move this up here. And move back. That will do. If I play that now, you can see we have some wobble in the ribbon. One thing to note is you need to set your playback options to real time to see this working as it should. At the moment though, this isn't right. The wobble goes on for too long, plus the lower sections of the leg move too much. Now this could be useful if you were simulating clothing, I guess, or something made from jelly. There are a few ways we can control how this simulates though. First, let's look at the basic attributes. Jiggle weight controls how much of a jiggle you get, so let's drop this a little bit, down to 0.8. It's a small amount, but as you can see, it's completely changed the effect, so it's now more subtle. If we play it through a few times, the lower section moves way too much. On a dog leg, this has very little visible fat or muscle, so we need to reduce this. Before we do, I'm just going to adjust the keys. And also change the pose so we get a firmer, more deliberate leg movement. Okay, that's better. We are getting more movement at the top of the leg now, so we can see how that's being simulated. So, to reduce the influence in the lower leg, we can adjust the weighting. Go to Deform and then towards the bottom, under the Paint Weight section, open the options for Jiggle. Let's reduce this section by about half. So set value to 0.5 and paint this area. Now you might end up with display issues like I have. So you can't actually see the weight values being applied. Or you get this odd red flashing like I have up here. In this instance, I prefer to use the good old component editor. So let's close this and select these CVs. Now open the component editor and look under the Weighted Deformer tab. We can see all the weight values for the selected CVs here. All I'm going to do is set those to 0.5. We can see here we are editing the Jiggle Deformer's weights. So that was a bit easier than painting the weights manually. Let's adjust the lower leg next. So select the CVs. And we want the deformer to have less of an effect here. Let's set this to 0.25. Okay, let's play that and see how it looks. We can see the difference. The upper leg is moving more than the rest. The lower section has just a little movement. And you can continue to adjust those weighting values to get the right look you need for your rig. With those done though, we can still tweak the movement. We can go back to the attributes. Here we have stiffness and damping. These will control how the ribbon moves when forces are applied. If I set stiffness to 1, you can see the ribbon has less flexibility, so it snaps back to its position quicker. If I also set damping to 1, you see we get some issues because damping makes the ribbon drag more as it moves, but stiffness is trying to snap it back, so there's a bit of a conflict. Let's set them both to 0. So now we have a heavier looking ribbon. I think in general 0.5 is a good starting point for us to work from. Let's try a stiffness of 0.8. So that's looking a little better. Maybe set both to 0.7. Yeah, not sure about that. Reduce the damping. Okay, we're getting there. As you can see, you could probably spend all day just playing around with these values. We have a nice wobble in the upper leg, but the middle section still moves too much. I'll just make sure they are actually set to 0.5. Yep. Okay, let's reduce the jiggle deformer's influence a bit more. Maybe 0.4. Okay, I could continue tweaking these, but you get the general idea. There are two more attributes you can play with, and that's the force along normal and force on tangent attributes. These control the direction the CV's move in. If I turn them both off, we get an effect similar to having damping set to 1. With follow along normal set to 1, we do get a nicer movement as it applies the jiggle to the surface normals in the direction of movement. If we switch to force on tangent, we get a more floaty effect. I would experiment with these if you were after a specific effect, but for this rig, just leave those at 1. So as you can see, you can use the attributes to get the general movement, and then tweak the weights to reduce its effect on the different areas of the leg. With that being said, I would hold off on any final adjustments until the skin is attached to the joints, because the movement will look different. Okay, let's look at connecting these attributes. Actually, I might change those names before we move on. I'll just pause the video for a second, update the names of those attributes, and I'll be back in a sec. Okay, that's better. I prefer those names. They make a bit more sense. Right, let's connect them. Open the connection editor and make sure the control is in the left side. Here we have the attributes. We just want the jiggle deformer on the right side. And connect enable to enable. We can see it's connected because it has the yellow marker. Amount is connected to jiggle weight because this controls the amount of jiggle we have. Connect flexibility to stiffness, and finally float to damping, although we could maybe change the attribute name again to weight instead, because the more damping we have, the heavier the ribbon seems. We could maybe use mass. I don't know, let's leave it as it is for now. I'll think about that before the next video. Okay, that's those connected. So we added enable so we can quickly turn the simulation on and off. This is handy if you end up with performance issues or if the animator simply doesn't want this active. If I was animating this, I would want to get the animation in first and then bring in the secondary animation after and activate these and tweak them later. If we turn that back on, it's working again. And we can adjust it all from here. Let's set the amount to 2, which I suspect will break things, but let's see. Whoa, yeah, thought so. Okay, 0.5 then. So we need to play around with the attributes again because they are set to 0.5. So 0.8. Yeah, that looks better. What I would recommend is maybe having these attributes on a global control, so you can control all the legs at the same time, rather than individually. This does depend on the sort of rig you are working on though. What we can also do is use the other deformers at the same time. So if we use the sine deformer and add a wave to the leg, the jiggle still works. Now this is a bit of a cheap way to get a bit more movement out of your ribbons without having to set up any complicated muscle systems. So in most cases, it could be useful to get some secondary animation into your rigs. Okay, I'm going to set up the other legs now with the jiggle deformer. There we go, all the legs set up and working in exactly the same way. We get a little bit of movement in the ribbons as they move. What would be good though is if at this stage we could see how this would affect the model. So let's quickly bind it and see. I'll bring the model back and unlock it and show the joints again. I can use the selection set we created in the previous video to quickly select the follicle joints. Oh, it would help if we could actually see them. That's better. I'm going to select the spine too, just so the upper section of the model has something to hang on to. Okay, let's just quickly skin this to the selected joints. And hide all the systems. And let's play that. Just ignore the head for now. Okay, so we can clearly see the wobble here. You can also see it in the rear leg too. Now it doesn't look right at this stage, but as I said earlier, what I would recommend is coming back to the settings once the model is fully skinned and all the weighting has been painted and adjusted. That way you will get a clearer idea of how the joints are influencing the model. But we don't just need to restrict this to the dog's legs. Later in the series we will add a similar effect to the chest and stomach, so we get some slight movement here. We can also use it in the dog's face too, so maybe the upper lips move when he's walking or running. We could even use it in the tail if we wanted, but I have another idea for that. So you see, it's very versatile. While we have the model skinned, let's look at the other deformers. So you can see here how the sine controls will affect the model. Okay, so that's the main deformers added to the legs. As I said earlier, feel free to play with other deformers too and see what effects you can get. Now before we move on, I wanted to do a couple of quick updates to the rig. The first thing I want to do is make sure the tweak controls are hidden, so the animator only sees them if they need them. They aren't primary controls. All I'm going to do is use these attributes to control the visibility. Open the connection editor again. With the root control in the left side, make sure non-keyable attributes are visible. These are what we want. Let's select all the tweak controls on the rear legs. And pick walk up twice. What we want are the offset groups. Load those into the connection editor and simply connect the rear leg tweak attribute to each one's visibility attribute. Good, those are hidden now. Now do the same with the front leg tweak controls. Select them and pick walk up twice to select the offset groups. And connect front leg tweak to each one's visibility attribute. There we go. It's a simple step, but it makes the rig cleaner and easier to work with. It's good practice to hide the secondary controls so the animator can focus on the primary ones. Okay, the next update I want to do is to just make sure the rig is scalable. This is something you should keep on top of as you're building it. Let's test it now. Okay. So we do have some issues. It looks like the control joints aren't scaling with the rest of the rig. We can rectify this easily because they are all inside the same group. Open the connection editor. And all we need to do is make sure the control joints group is scaling with the root control. So just connect their scale attributes. Okay, good. That looks like it's fixed. So I couldn't do this video without also updating the ribbon creation tool, adding these systems and deformers into it so it will create them automatically for you. So with version 2.5, you also get the option to add the basic deformers and the jiggle deformer too. What's more, the tool also has the option for you to add the jiggle deformer to the ribbons you generate from polygons. Okay, so with those checkboxes checked, let's build a ribbon. And just zoom out. So here you can see we have the deformers and the ribbons. Let's hide those. Now because there isn't a control to add the attributes to, like we did with the rig, the tool simply adds them to the main ribbon. You can see them here. So you could then just connect your own controls to these. It works just as it did in the tutorial. So we can set sine blend to 1 and then adjust amplitude to get a nice even wave. You can then animate it like this. You can adjust the ribbon with the controls too. The jiggle deformer attributes are here, and the actual node is below it here if you need to fine tune it. Let's add some simple animation onto this. And turn off the sine blend for now. If I play this now, we get a nice wobble at the end. The only thing the tool won't do at this stage is assign the weight values for you, so you will need to do it manually. You can do this with the component editor as shown earlier in the video, or you could try using the paint weight tools. With the generate ribbon from surface section, I'll just create the guide curves and change the control ratio to 2. We can add the jiggle deformer to this too when generated. If we create that and hide the sphere, you see the attributes are on the ribbon again, but only the ones for the jiggle deformer, which is here. Okay, let's animate this too to test it. So you can see a slight wobble here at the end. Let's adjust the keys. Make the last key's tangents linear so the control comes to a more abrupt stop. Okay, that's a bit more noticeable, but you get the general idea. So that's the latest update to the tool, which will be available for Ant CGI Club members to download. You can also download it from any of my online stores too, so go check them out. And if you want to see the full tool in action, you can watch my video where I demonstrate how to use it. Okay, so that's ribbon deformers covered. I think what I would like to do is move on to the spine, head and neck next, while we're working on ribbons, just to keep them together while they're fresh in your mind. After that, we can then come back to the paws, and then the face and the tail rigs. Okay, there we go. We've come to the end of another video. Thanks so much for watching right to the end, and if you found this video useful, please hit that like button to show your support. While you're at it, you could also subscribe and enable notifications so you're kept up to date with future videos and community posts. If you have any questions or suggestions, please post them in the comments below or contact me through the Ant CGI Club Twitter account and I will try my best to reply. Alternatively, you could post them in the Ant CGI Club Discord server where I spend more of my time. You can find an exclusive invitation to join in the description below. Remember that you can also join the Ant CGI Club to help support future videos while also earning exclusive rewards. Alternatively, if you would just like to show your appreciation, why not treat me to a coffee at my Ko-fi page? The link is on the screen now and in the description below. Thanks again, this is Ant CGI signing off and I will see you on the next one.